A woman stands alone in the scorching desert, pregnant, enslaved, abandoned. She's running from cruelty, running toward death, and then she sees him, the angel of the Lord. The first person in all of human history to receive this visitation isn't Abraham, isn't Moses, isn't David or Isaiah or any patriarch you've ever heard of. It's an Egyptian slave girl named Hagar. And what she does next? Nobody in Scripture, not one single person, ever did before or since. She looks at the living God, and she gives him a name. This story is in Genesis 16 and 21. But most Christians skip right past it. We celebrate Abraham's faith, Sarah's miracle baby, the covenant promises. But we miss the slave who encountered God twice in the wilderness, before any of the patriarchs received even one visitation. We miss the mother who heard God make promises about her son that still shape the Middle East today. We miss the moment when a powerless, voiceless woman looked up at heaven and spoke a name that would echo through eternity. El Roi. El Roi, not the God who saves, not the God who judges, the God who sees me. In the next 20 minutes, you're going to discover why Hagar, a pagan slave from Egypt, became the first person in all of Scripture to meet the angel of the Lord face to face. What happened inside Abraham's tent that drove a pregnant teenager to choose certain death in the desert over staying? How God made not one, but two sets of promises about Ishmael that affect global politics to this very day. What the angel told her that was so powerful, she willingly returned to her abuser. Why El Roi, the God who sees, might be the most important name of God for anyone who's ever felt invisible, used, powerless, or cast aside. And what Hagar's story reveals about which people God actually pays attention to. Because this isn't just ancient history, this is a message for the unseen. Let's go back to the beginning. Canaan, approximately 2000 BC. Abraham and Sarah have been married for decades. God promised them a son, an heir, descendants as numerous as the stars. But Sarah is 75 years old, barren, and every month without a child is another month of shame. You need to understand something about the ancient world. A woman's entire identity was tied to producing an heir. No children meant no status, no security, no legacy. And worse, it meant God's covenant promise looked impossible. So Sarah makes a decision that will create catastrophe for generations. Genesis 16:3 tells us, Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar her maid, the Egyptian, and gave her to Abram, her husband, to be his wife. Gave her, like property. The Hebrew word is lakach, to take, to seize. Sarah took Hagar and gave her to Abraham. Hagar doesn't speak in this verse. She has no voice, no choice. She's likely a teenager. We don't know her exact age. The text tells us she's Egyptian, probably acquired when Abraham and Sarah fled to Egypt years earlier during a famine. Maybe she was a gift from Pharaoh. Maybe she was purchased in a slave market. Either way, her life is not her own. Genesis 16:4, he went into Hagar and she conceived. And immediately, everything changes. Verse 4 continues, and when she saw that she had conceived, her mistress became despised in her eyes. Now here's what's happening. Hagar, this powerless slave, suddenly realizes she has something Sarah doesn't have. She's carrying Abraham's child. The promised heir might be growing in her womb. For the first time in her life, she has status, value. And Sarah is furious. Verse 5, then Sarai said to Abram, my wrong be upon you. I gave my maid into your embrace. And when she saw that she had conceived, I became despised in her eyes. Sarah blames Abraham. Abraham, being a coward, says in verse 6, look, your maid is in your hand. Do to her as you please. Do to her as you please. Genesis 16:6. Then Sarai dealt harshly with her, and she fled from her presence. The Hebrew word for dealt harshly is anah. It means to afflict, to oppress, to humiliate. This is the same word used later to describe how Egypt enslaved the Israelites. Sarah doesn't just scold Hagar, she abuses her, oppresses her, makes her life unbearable. And Hagar, pregnant, alone, powerless, makes a decision. She runs. She flees into the wilderness. Now think about what this means. Hagar is choosing almost certain death, a pregnant woman. No supplies, no protection. The desert is brutal, scorching during the day, freezing at night. There are no roads, no cities, no wells for miles. She's heading toward Shur, toward Egypt, her homeland. But she'll never make it. She knows she won't make it. But staying means continuing to endure Sarah's cruelty. Staying means watching her child be born into slavery. Staying means a lifetime of humiliation. So she chooses the desert. Genesis 16:7. Now the angel of the Lord found her by a spring of water in the wilderness, by the spring on the way to Shur. Stop right here. This is the first time in all of Scripture that the angel of the Lord appears to anyone. Not to Adam, not to Noah, not to Abraham himself, to Hagar, an Egyptian slave girl. The angel of the Lord. Many scholars believe this is a pre-incarnate appearance of Christ himself, seeks her out. He doesn't wait for her to pray. She's not even calling out to the God of Abraham. She's a pagan Egyptian, but God goes looking for her. Verse 8, and he said, Hagar, Sarai's maid, where have you come from and where are you going? Notice something. He calls her by name. Not woman, not slave, not you there. Hagar, God knows her name. Hagar answers honestly, I am fleeing from the presence of my mistress Sarai. No excuses, no justification, just the truth. And here's where it gets controversial. Verse 9, the angel of the Lord said to her, return to your mistress and submit to her hand. Wait, what? God tells her to go back, to return to her abuser. This troubles people. How could a loving God send her back into oppression? But watch what happens next. Because God doesn't just command, He makes promises. Verse 10, I will multiply your descendants exceedingly, so that they shall not be counted for multitude. Hold on. This is the exact same promise God made to Abraham in Genesis 13:16. God is telling Hagar, your descendants will be as numerous as Abraham's. This slave girl, this Egyptian outsider, she's receiving covenant language. Verse 11, and the angel of the Lord said to her, behold, you are with child, and you shall bear a son. You shall call his name Ishmael, because the Lord has listened to your affliction. Ishmael, Ishmael. God hears. God is naming her son. Personally, directly. He's heard her cries. He's witnessed her suffering. And he's memorializing it in her son's very name. Every time she says Ishmael, she'll remember, God heard me. Verse 12 describes Ishmael's future. He shall be a wild donkey of a man. His hand shall be against every man, and every man's hand against him. And he shall dwell in the presence of all his brethren. Now modern readers hear wild donkey and think it's an insult. It's not. In ancient culture, the wild donkey was a symbol of freedom. Untamed, uncontrollable, living in the open desert. God is promising Hagar, your son will be free, independent, strong. No one will enslave him. And then comes verse 13, the moment that changes everything. Then she called the name of the Lord who spoke to her. You are the God who sees. For she said, have I also here seen him who sees me? El Roi. El Roe. She names God. Abraham never did this. Moses saw the burning bush, and God revealed his name to Moses. But Moses didn't name God. Hagar, a slave, a foreigner, a woman, does what no patriarch ever did. She experiences God so intimately that she gives him a name. Hagar returns. She goes back to Sarah, back to Abraham. But she doesn't return the same woman who fled. She returns knowing, God sees me. When Sarah mistreats her, God sees. When Abraham ignores her, God sees. When she feels invisible and worthless, God sees. Genesis 16:15. So Hagar bore Abram a son, and Abram named his son, whom Hagar bore, Ishmael. Hagar is 86 years old when Ishmael is born. For 13 years, Hagar raises Ishmael in Abraham's household. 13 years where Ishmael is Abraham's only son, the heir, the beloved. Then Genesis 21 happens. Sarah, at 90 years old, miraculously conceives. She gives birth to Isaac. And suddenly, everything Hagar has, her status, her security, her son's inheritance, is threatened. Genesis 21:9. And Sarah saw the son of Hagar the Egyptian, whom she had borne to Abraham, mocking. The Hebrew word is metzachek, playing, laughing, mocking. Scholars debate what exactly happened. Was Ishmael, now about 14, mocking Isaac, playing with him? Or was Sarah simply jealous seeing them together? We don't know, but Sarah's response is brutal. Verse 10. Therefore she said to Abraham, Cast out this bondwoman and her son, for the son of this bondwoman shall not be heir with my son, namely, with Isaac. Cast out, not send away with provisions, not give them a home elsewhere. Cast out, exile them, banish them to certain death. Genesis 21:11. And the matter was very displeasing in Abraham's sight because of his son. Abraham loved Ishmael. This is his firstborn, his son for 14 years. But look at verse 12:13. But God said to Abraham, Do not let it be displeasing in your sight because of the lad or because of your bondwoman. Whatever Sarah has said to you, listen to her voice. For in Isaac your seed shall be called. Yet I will also make a nation of the son of the bondwoman, because he is your seed. God tells Abraham, Let them go, but I will make Ishmael into a great nation too. Genesis 21:14. So Abraham rose early in the morning and took bread and a skin of water, and putting it on her shoulder, he gave it to Hagar, putting the child on her shoulder, and sent her away. Read that again. A skin of water, one container, for a woman and teenage boy in the desert. That's not provision. That's death with a delay. Verse 15-16. And the water in the skin was used up, and she placed the boy under one of the shrubs. Then she went and sat down across from him, at a distance of about a bow shot. For she said to herself, Let me not see the death of the boy. So she sat opposite him, and lifted her voice and wept. This is a mother's breaking point. She's carried this child, raised him for 14 years, loved him, watched him grow strong, and now she has to watch him die. She places him under a bush, gives him whatever shade exists. Then she walks away because she cannot bear to watch her son die of thirst, and she weeps. Verse 17. And God heard the voice of the lad. Then the angel of God called to Hagar out of heaven and said to her, What ails you, Hagar? Fear not, for God has heard the voice of the lad where he is. God heard. Remember Ishmael's name? God hears. 14 years ago, God named him this. And now, at the moment of his death, God fulfills that name. He hears the boy crying. But notice, the angel doesn't just speak to Ishmael, he speaks to Hagar. What ails you, Hagar? God cares about the mother's grief, not just the child's suffering. Verse 18. Arise, lift up the lad, and hold him with your hand, for I will make him a great nation. A great nation. Not just he'll survive, not just he'll have descendants, a great nation. Genesis 17:20 records God's promise about Ishmael. As for Ishmael, I have heard you. Behold, I have blessed him, and will make him fruitful, and will multiply him exceedingly. He shall beget 12 princes, and I will make him a great nation. 12 princes, a great nation. This promise, made to a slave and her son, affects the Middle East to this day. Genesis 21:19. Then God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. And she went and filled the skin with water, and gave the lad a drink. God opened her eyes. The water was there the whole time. She was dying of thirst 20 feet from a well, but she couldn't see it. Sometimes we're surrounded by God's provision, and we can't see it because we're blinded by despair. God had to open her eyes, and when he did, she saw the well. She saved her son. They survived. Verse 20 to 21. So God was with the lad, and he grew and dwelt in the wilderness and became an archer. He dwelt in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother took a wife for him from the land of Egypt. Ishmael survives. He thrives. He becomes strong, independent, free, just like God promised. He fathers 12 sons who become 12 princes, tribal leaders whose descendants populate the Arabian Peninsula. Today, scholars estimate that the Arab peoples, billions of people across the Middle East and North Africa, trace their lineage back to Ishmael, a great nation, just like God promised. But here's what I want you to understand. Ishmael wasn't the child of the covenant through whom Messiah would come. That line went through Isaac. But God didn't abandon Ishmael. He didn't discard Hagar. He saw them. He heard them. He blessed them. Because El Roi, the God who sees, doesn't just pay attention to the chosen ones. He sees the outcasts. So here's the question for us today. Who do you think God pays attention to? The successful, the powerful, the influential, the ones with platforms and audiences, the pastors and ministers and missionaries? Or does he see the single mom working 3 jobs to feed her kids? Does he hear the immigrant cleaning hotel rooms, invisible to the guests who walk past? Does he notice the student who feels overlooked, the employee who feels undervalued, the spouse who feels unseen? Hagar's story answers that question. God's first angelic visitation wasn't to Abraham, the father of faith, the mighty patriarch. It was to Hagar, the Egyptian slave with no power, no voice, no status. God didn't wait for her to be worthy. He didn't wait for her to have the right theology or join the right covenant. He sought her out when she was at her lowest, and he gave her a promise that would echo through millennia. What does El Roi mean for you today? It means when you feel invisible, God sees you. When you feel unheard, God hears you. When you feel like your pain doesn't matter to anyone, it matters to him. He knows your name. He sees your struggle. He hears your cries. Hagar wasn't perfect. She wasn't even part of God's covenant people. But God met her in the wilderness. Twice. He made promises to her. He opened her eyes. He provided for her needs. And he's the same God today.